6 months. That would put him in danger of missing the start of next year. Jackson was named first team all defense this past season. All right, guys, let me ask the question then. What does this do to free agency now? What does it force Memphis to do, if anything at all, Coach?
Memphis is one of the few teams, because they're so deep, they can survive Jaren Jackson, even missing a few games or the first month of the season. This team is deep, and you got a guy in John Morant, even though they don't play the same position, was playing at an MVP caliber level. And I know they just traded D'Anthony Milton, but this is a very deep roster. This is a team that got, their feet wet in the playoffs last year, obviously got knocked out by the Golden State Warriors. But they have various degrees of lineups. They can play big. They can play small. They have some other guys, like Kyle Anderson. That's a free agent. We'll see what happens with him. But you got some really talented guys on their bench. This was a team that was 11 or 12 deep on some nights. So even though Jaren Jackson is a stud and he was part of that 1-2 punch with John Morant and a big guy that can stretch the floor and also knock down some threes, when he got in foul trouble, obviously that hurt their team in the start of some of those early games in the first quarters. But I think they'll be able to survive. They need him more, obviously, in the second half of the season and come playoff time than the first month of the season.
Bill, what do you think?
I absolutely agree with Coach. I mean, on a lot of teams, this would be a significant loss. This is I think, a great young team. With all respect to Draymond Green, I think they're going to be just fine in the years ahead. They've got a really great young core, of which Jackson is obviously a big part. And, guys, they've also got a sizable amount of cap space. I mean, depending what they do with some of the players on that team, guys like Kyle Anderson and some of the expiring contracts, Dylan Brooks, Steven Adams, they have the flexibility to get anywhere from $19 and $30 million in pretty easy to utilize cap space starting right now. So if they feel like there's a problem, they can plug that hole. But I'm with Coach. I don't think they have to panic. It's a really good basketball team. And I'll just remind everybody how deep they are. When John Morant missed games last year, and there's a lot of games, they still won a ton of basketball games. They actually won at a higher clip without John Morant than with John Morant. That doesn't mean they don't need John Morant. It just means they have remarkable depth. And if they can do that, they can succeed at that level without John in the regular season, they can certainly do it without another one of their big players. I think Memphis will be fine, and I think they have the luxury, as Coach noted, of being pretty patient. They just want to make sure that their core, Jaren Jackson Jr. certainly included, is healthy and ready to go in April.
All right, so you guys think Memphis will be all right? Hopefully Jaren Jackson Jr. will be all right, coming off that injury that he's going to miss about 6 to 8 weeks, it looks like right now. Guys, we got more breaking news.
I want to play with Kyrie Irving again in his life. He wants a new address, and he's going to get a new address. It's just a matter of how much Sean Marks can get in return.
All right, well, Kevin Durant, he wants out of Brooklyn. And look, there's no denying that Kevin Durant is not really declining all that much the past couple of seasons. The Brooklyn Nets have been much better with Durant on the floor than without Durant on the floor. And that is, by the way, not only offensively, but defensively as well. They're just a better team with Durant, and some other team is going to be a better team, most likely, with Kevin Durant next team. It's just a matter of who and how it all happens. And we've got more free agency news where Jalen Brunson intends to sign a 4-year, about $110 million deal with the New York Knicks. That is according to The Athletic. Brunson's coming off a career year with the Mavericks, averaging just over 16 points and 5 assists per game. All right, so I look at that, 16 points, 5 assists. I'm going to Mr. Ryder here, Bill. The Knicks seem to do all this on draft night. They opened up all this money. And I'm not an expert in all this, but it seems like for a guy who averaged 16 points and 5 assists per game, was it worth it?
I can tell you that I've talked to a lot of experts around the NBA, and there are mixed feelings on this. And to be fair, there are plenty of voices, plenty of people in front offices I respect, who I visited with. We knew this was going to happen, who thought that Jalen Brunson was a really nice move for the New York Knicks. You're going to get him if he emerges as a superstar, that certainly you hope he can be, for what actually is not a terrible price. But there are certainly people, and I would count myself among them, maybe not as an expert, as a reporter, among them, who are highly skeptical that this is a wise move. And maybe I have the bias of the New York Knicks involved, but I felt like it was questionable, guys, whether Jalen Brunson was worth this kind of money on a pretty small sample size. And when the New York Knicks gave him the money and it became official, I became a little more convinced he's not worth that return, because how often do the Knicks make the right decision? Unless this is part of a long-term plan, and to be fair, Leon Rose, who runs basketball operations for the Knicks, former head of basketball for CAA, an agent, a power agent, who has a relationship with Jalen Brunson, maybe he's got a long-term plan. And maybe for the first time in a generation, the Knicks are actually operating on a 2 or 3 year plan and understand they cannot simply put together a winner overnight. But to me, it certainly does remind of some of the times where the Knicks have tried to win the press conference, a desperation move. It is a lot of money for a player that, at least for me, and some, not all, but some of the people I've talked around the NBA do not view as a difference maker on his own or on this Knicks roster.
Well, in this situation, this is a long-term play. Look at historically how dismal the Knicks have been in terms of their decision-making. You remember when Phil Jackson was the president of basketball operations, and the move they tried to make in terms of drafting players, assigning players, hiring coaches. The Knicks have a solid coach in Tom Thibodeau, so that was a good start. They've reorganized the front office. That was a good start. Now, this is the start of Leon Rose's. This is the real start for me. And because this is the real start, beautiful move in hiring and signing Jalen Brunson. Sure, you may have to overpay a little bit, but the guy's a 2-time NCAA champion on a really good Villanova team. He's from he played in Philadelphia right down the street. He's coming off of a season where he basically single-handedly led the Mavericks in those first couple of games against the Utah Jazz in the first round while they were waiting for Luka Doncic to recover from his calf injury. So he has deep playoff experience. Even though it's not college, he's won 2 NCAA titles. That matters because he has winning DNA. Look at the rest of the roster. So this is a really good start. This guy's very clever, high basketball IQ. You're not going to win a championship with Jalen Brunson being your first or second best player on your team. But as you continue to re-energize your franchise and change your culture, he eventually is going to be your third or fourth best player on your team. But you got to start somewhere. If the Knicks, if they don't make this move and they draft younger players in this year's draft, they're not going to draft anybody that's halfway as good as Jalen Brunson. So I really like this move. It's more of a move for their 3 to 5 year plan, and this is a great way to start your plan.
All right, very interesting, because Brunson is the #1 guy the Knicks went after in this offseason. And with Kevin Durant possibly leaving town, it leaves like this celebrity vacuum in New York. And it's just going to be amazing to see what the New York press does with Jalen Brunson if he's not the best guy on the team, if he's not the guy that immediately shoots the Knicks into the stratosphere. But we'll move on from that story because, guys, we got some breaking news. Grizzlies big man Jaren Jackson Jr. underwent surgery to repair a stress fracture in his right foot today. Memphis announced